In today's show, let's talk about the present and the future of the Trailblazers. Joe Cronin's in charge. He's pledging to make changes. Jason Quick is going to join us. We're going to talk about what those changes might be. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts, and now also on YouTube. We're trying to get to 2,000 subscribers by 2022. That's 2,000 subscribers by New Year's. So if you're watching on YouTube, smash that button. You get a new show 5 days a week, the only daily Trailblazers podcast. If you're a podcast listener, not a YouTube person, give it a try, or at least go over to YouTube right now and subscribe and help support the show. We truly, truly appreciate it. Today's show is a very special one. We are joined by Jason Quick of The Athletic, a regular guest on this podcast, except exactly this time last week when some news broke and Jason had to leave. But other than that, we always get Jason each week because he's a ton of fun, and we got a bunch of news this week. The Blazers introduced new interim GM Joe Cronin, and we got a lot to talk about. Jason, thanks so much for joining us. How you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
Apologies. I'm scarfing down a little bit of yogurt right now.
Hey, you got to fuel up.
So,
you need that. You need that protein. You start your day right. We're recording this on a Friday morning. Jason's already stayed up late to write about Joe Cronin, or at least worked into the evening to write about Joe Cronin, then woke up to, be a family man and do things take care of the fam. So it's okay if you need breakfast too, Jason. We understand.
I'm really not regretting, but finding it's more difficult. The decision I made to go to a one-car family is not as easy as I imagined.
Yeah, it's a lot of, we're a one-car family, and there's a lot of negotiating and drop-offs and pickup and all that stuff. So I know how it goes, particularly when you work nights. That makes it a little trickier for sure.
Yeah.
So yesterday the Blazers had not a press conference, Jason, but a conversation with.
Yeah, it was funny, huh?
Perfect branding, great work, everyone. A conversation with Joe Cronin, the Blazers' new GM, also Dwayne Haskins, president, Blazers president on the business side, and Chauncey
Hankins.
Hankins? What'd I call him?
Haskins.
Oh, that's a football player for the Pittsburgh Steelers, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I've got the Steelers on my brain. We were just talking about them before we hit record. But Chauncey Billups was there too, and there's, we can get into sort of the business side and people not coming to the arena at another date. But I want to talk about Joe Cronin because this was the big thing. What were your sort of initial takeaways from that, from the opening conversation with Joe?
Well, first and foremost, I think people got a feel of Joe the person and like how likable he is and how mild-mannered and just approachable he is. This is a really well-liked person within the walls of the Blazers. But I think they also got a sense that this is an aggressive guy. As far as looking at moves and how he views building a roster. And I think he kind of got that across that, look, there are moves to be made with this roster, and I'm going to pursue them. And in the course of that, I'm not afraid to take risks. And, I talked this week with Kevin Pritchard. I talked with Chad Buchanan, both now at the Pacers, who worked obviously with Joe here in Portland. And the thing that really stood out to me in my conversations with them was how he was unafraid to go against the grain when they had their high leverage meetings and discussing draft picks, trades, free agency. Joe wasn't afraid to go, no, I disagree. I don't think we should do that. Or I think we should do this. And I think that, one, it takes a lot of balls, but it also takes, you have to argue your case and come prepared. And Joe, as Kevin Pritchard says, is very thorough. Everything he does has been researched, background checked, looked, run. He does it top to bottom. And so I think they're getting a really prepared guy, a really thorough guy. And it was surprising to me in talking to Joe after the press conference. I didn't realize quite how involved he was in the Neil Olshey regime.
Sure.
Neil had him recruit free agents, had him initiate trade talks, take the initial calls from teams and kind of vet them. And then Joe would go to Neil and say, hey, I talked to Team X and they're thinking this. I think this might be a good idea. And then they would kind of bat it around and Neil would send him back with what the Blazers, thought of it. So he was involved in a lot.
Yeah, I always thought he was just the cap guy. I remember when I was on the beat, it was like they signed Enes Kanter to that max offer sheet or that big offer sheet or whatever it was, and I was like, I saw him at Summer League, and I was like, is this real, Joe? Do you want this guy on your team, or are you just being mean to OKC? Are you getting him back? And he kind of not only explained the sort of cap machinations to me very quickly, but laid out the reasons why you would want an Enes Kanter on your roster, but I had always assumed just from that interaction that he was the numbers guy because he was good at it. He made it very easy for me, someone who is pretends to be numbers inclined, but is not like someone who works in the front office can understand. And he, so when you're reporting there in the Athletic, I also didn't know that he was I know he was promoted to assistant GM, but I didn't know he was making all those calls.
Yeah, a point man, really, of a lot of things, and then constructing the training camp roster, the summer league rosters. So he has dealt with other GMs. He's dealt with agents. He's dealt with players. So I think they're getting a really well-rounded and thorough person making the calls right now, and I think he has a real shot to win this job.
I was going to ask you that. Do you think he'll be? You don't think this is it could be temporary, but you think that he'll have a legitimate chance to have the interim tag removed, as they say?
I do, and I think this is not a 2-week deal where he's just keeping his seat warm,
right?
I think they're gonna, if they do make a move, it'll be something later, in 2022. Okay. I don't think this is going to be something that's going to turn over in a month or so. And I think they're going to give him a chance to put his fingerprints on this roster and see how that goes. And if it kind of bombs or fizzles out, then I think they might, kick up their speed or their intensity on their search. But I think they're really going to give him a good shot. And I think that's the sense he gets as well. And he's been really encouraged by the communication and the just interactions with Jody and Bert. They've been very honest with them. They've been very open, and they've had a lot of great dialogue. And he says, he's been having a blast sitting next to Jody, and they talk almost the entire game about a variety of things. But getting back to yesterday, I thought Joe came across as really likable, really relatable, but also as unafraid to kind of make waves and to shake this up and put a new imprint on this roster. And it's another thing in talking to his former coworkers is that a defining trait of Joe, as they would evaluate players throughout the years, be it free agents, draft picks, whatever, is he liked kind of the high upside players, the guys who could grow. The 5-year player who, the college player who is solid, but probably just going to be a role player, a Dante Cunningham, a Jeff Pendergraph. Those aren't Joe Cronin type players. No. He wants the Anthony Simons or, somebody who's going to grow into something, a Travis Outlaw.
Yeah, Elliot Williams thinking like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of exciting. Some of those guys might fizzle out, but boy, you get one of those guys to pop and you're looking pretty good, and you have a time to see them really flourish. So
sure.
I thought that was really interesting, that it's not just here and there. Oh yeah, I like this guy in a flyer. He's consistently been really all in on the upside of these young players, or those are the types of players that really attract him. These athletic guys who can
Greg Brown
grow into. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Greg Brown seems like a Joe Cronin type guy. You mentioned he's going to put his fingerprints on this. Let's talk about, he said in no uncertain terms that changes are coming. Let's talk a little bit about how you see his vision in the second segment. But before we do that, I want to tell my listeners about Truebill. It's the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you don't need, you don't want, or you just simply forgot about. On average, people save up to $720 a year with Truebill. Because companies make subscriptions hard to cancel, Truebill is here to make it incredibly simple. Just link your accounts on Truebill and you'll cancel your unwanted subscriptions in one tap. And for any that take more than one tap, that is not just one button, a Truebill concierge is there, so they will cancel your unwanted subscriptions so you don't have to. They make it simple, and you're paying for a service that, if it is more than just one button, there's people out there to go track it down and make it simple for you. I have used Truebill. I went to truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. I signed up for the free trial just to quickly sort of get my eyeballs. I'm a mid-range millennial. I want to get my eyeballs on all the subscriptions I have. I've got a whole bunch of them. So from the time I downloaded the app to the time I was looking at all my subscriptions, probably took less than 15 minutes, like 10 minutes maybe. Super simple, super straightforward, and allowed me to quickly and easily see all the subscriptions I pay for and decide what I wanted to keep and kind of where my money was going. So this could be something that you might need too. Maybe you're a mid-range millennial with a whole bunch of digital subscriptions. So don't fall for those subscription scams. Start canceling today at truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. Go right now, truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. It could save you thousands a year. That's truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. All right. Still chatting here with Jason Quick of The Athletic, a weekly guest here on this podcast. He's eating breakfast and he's talking about the Blazers interim GM, Joe Cronin. The thing that stood out to me, Jason, is several times during the conversation. I'm going to use the Blazers branding out of respect. The conversation that was held yesterday. I think the difference was that they didn't put a table out. If it had been a press conference, there would have been a table, but they didn't put it. They gave them high chairs to sit in, so they knew it was a conversation. And no mic stands. You hold the mic because if it's a press conference, there's a mic stand. I could work in PR.
They need to work in a fireplace in there or something.
Exactly. They should have given them bigger, comfier chairs or whatever, or had it moderated by Terry Porter. That would have been it.
There you go.
Several times during that conversation, Cronin said, we have challenges with this roster and we're going to fix them. That is as straightforward as a trade is coming as you'll hear. And based on your reporting, it sounds like Cronin is not afraid to take a swing. So we've kind of known that a trade was going to come to fix this roster, but now it sounds like Cronin is going to be the guy to do it. Do you think that's a fair read?
Oh yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
And go ahead.
They're going to look to get more athletic. I think they're going to look to get longer. They want more switchable defenders, and they want guys who compete. That is secretly, Chauncey's talked about it, but really at the core of things, Chauncey wants guys who compete harder than the guys currently on this roster. That has been probably the biggest letdown for him as a coach.
Sure.
Has been that some guys just don't have the competitive fire to, stand up to adversity and to fight when things are down. And so Joe is very much aligned with that. He thinks the same way. And so I think they're going to get guys, guys like and I'm not saying they're going to trade for him, but, guys like a Marcus Smart who are just grinders and will never quit and, battle you all 48 minutes. Guys like that, they're looking for players like that to acquire.
Yeah, I mean, playing hard is a skill. The more I watch basketball, I think it's a skill like shooting. And like some guys have it, like they have the skill of shooting, and some guys have to think about it. Like you have to think about your feet and your arm on a jump shot, you know? And I think the Blazers need to hunt down more guys with the skill of playing hard who just innately have, you know, the way people innately have touch or innately have defensive IQ, they innately have a really high motor. Because like we're 26 games into the season, and Chauncey Billups has openly questioned his team's like competitiveness on 3 or 4 different occasions. That's probably a pretty brutal ratio. Cool for people like you and I who are like, hell yeah, put it on the record. Let's say it. I love it. I love it. Say it out in public. But not ideal if you're, say, like a member of the team. It's a very different vibe. One thing that has struck me was on Monday, this seems like so long ago, but you got a text message from CJ McCollum that said Oregon is still home, which to you, based on your read on it and my read as well, that sounds like a guy who's kind of resigned to knowing that Oregon might not be home for long. Part of the sort of Joe Cronin being aggressive has to include potentially trading CJ McCollum, right?
No question. I don't know that he's going to do that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Joe's a smart guy. I think everyone can see that there's an overload of guards on this roster. And CJ has the most tradable contract in that you can get the most in return. I mean, I guess you could say Norm is tradable as well, but you have him locked up for more years.
Right.
You know, so if you trade one of those guys, the other guy can move in and play that position. So that's where the easiest route, I think, to get better is by trading one of their guards and getting either a power forward, a small forward, and maybe even a center in return, depending on how they handle Jusuf Nurkic and his contract move going forward. But yeah, and you know, the CJ thing was odd because we had just talked for 10 plus minutes in the hallways of the Moda Center about everything, about his play, about the trade rumors, all that stuff. And it was just odd I was driving home and thinking about how I was going to frame everything that we just talked about. And I got that text message and I never felt it was going there, you know,
Sure.
Our conversation. And that's why it was startling just to read that in and of itself, but then also on the heels of our conversation, it seemed weird. So I think CJ has been affected by it. I think he's thought a lot about it. And I think he's smart enough to realize that, boy, things are trending that way, that this is the way this season's shaping up, and looks like changes are going to be made. And my contract and my skill level, that combination makes it ripe for me to be probably involved in a deal.
Yeah, and Norman Powell's emergence as maybe the most consistent player on the roster, and Anthony Simons entering free agency this summer where the team has to make a decision, like all of it points to, if the time ever was to make a move on CJ, it was either in 2018 or right now. And from a craft perspective, because I'm always, I'm an avid reader of Jason Quick and have been for many moons, but I was like, I wonder if Jason would have written this story if he didn't get this text message. I wonder if he would have just punted on it and said like, yeah, I got pretty good stuff, but we'll wait on this. And then you get the text message.
No, I was going to write it no matter what.
Good.
But it definitely changed how I wrote it.
Okay. I'm always like, how did this come together? That's a perspective as someone who's tried to outright you, or spent half a decade getting my ass whooped by you. I'm always trying to figure out how the bread is made or whatever.
Well, you got to come up with an angle first. That's the hardest thing. And I knew that night that I wanted to talk to CJ. That was the story for me.
Yeah. And then the angle literally came to you on the drive home. let's come back in the third segment, close out a little bit more about sort of what's next with this team. But before, I want to tell my listeners about something I'm always telling my listeners about, and that is Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar on the market. Look, there are so many types of delicious Built Bars that if you try one, or if you have your friends and family try one, you'll be debating over what's the best. You'll say, is it raspberry or mint brownie, cherry or double chocolate, cookies and cream or peanut butter brownie? If you're me, those are your two favorite flavors. But like I said, there's so many that you'll find something that meets, that your palate enjoys, that you like, and that your family likes. And then you want to order more from there. And it's not just because they're delicious, covered in 100% chocolate, and have that candy bar-like texture. It's because they pack a punch. Peep the macros: 17 to 18 grams of protein, 130 to 180 calories, 4 to 5 grams of sugar, and no more than 5 grams of net carbs in these bars. They're good and good for you. Go get yourself some. Go to built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your next order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by BetOnline. It's got you covered all season long with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football season continues its march to the playoffs and as basketball season rolls on to the midway point. BetOnline is your number one spot for all sports action this season. So head on over to their new and updated website. You can do that on your desktop or your mobile device, and you sign up today. You'll get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit when you join using the promo code LOCKEDON. So from basketball to football to the NHL to boxing to UFC to soccer here and abroad, you want to bet on the MLS Cup happening in Portland with your Portland Timbers, or maybe you're a fan of their opponent from New York City. But you can do all of that at betonline.ag. Plus, you can play your favorite Vegas casino games. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You're still listening to Locked On Blazers. Still chatting here with Jason Quick of The Athletic, a weekly guest. What's up?
Hey, Mike, I've always been curious about the artwork behind you.
Oh, yeah.
You got Walton and Iverson. Where's that artwork from?
On the Walton one, which is him. If you're listening to the podcast, Jason's giving you a classic visual description. This guy is he's really making it tough for you. But this is another reason to subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can see into my little basement studio here at my house. The Walton art is him in a Clippers jersey, smelling a rose and crying. You can't really see the tear on.
Oh wow.
On the podcast, but yeah, it's a picture of him like post Blazers crying about the Rose City, and that one is art from Jacob Weinstein, a guy who did some art for the Free Darko books back in the day, a print I really love. And then it's Ryan Simpson did the little Allen Iverson one, and then I'm going to move out of the way for a second for the YouTube listeners out there, but that little art behind me is a picture of the Blazers 77 championship parade down Broadway right there. So,
that's hanging in my basement, I think.
There you go. Yeah. That's an old Oregonian photo that I purchased back when I was an employee and had a discount. Things done changed. I got to pay full price for my prints now. But yeah, all right. Yeah, that's my art.
I was just always curious.
Yeah. And you actually here right above me, this is a plaque signed by Jamal McGlure commemorating his trip to the 2000 All-Star game with the New Orleans Hornets. So bet you don't have any other podcasters who have that in their studio.
The Big Cat.
Yeah, shout out to Big Cat, the assistant coach for the Toronto Raptors and a Canadian.
He was a fun cover for the Blazers. I liked it when they had him. Yeah, he was enjoyable.
Hey, well, Jason, you got to change yours from Jamal McGlure to Jamal Crawford. That can be your tagline from instead of Damon to Damian.
Yeah.
And I guess whoever they get next. We talked about CJ McCollum, but like part of the sort of roster shakeup that Cronin is going to have to undertake is decisions about Robert Covington and Jusuf Nurkic. They seem really tradable to me. Do you agree that those guys, at least not like they're going to be traded, but like have to be considered as very likely to be sent out in one way or another?
Yeah, no question. I think both of them. And if I was to place odds on the first person to go, it'd probably be Robert Covington.
Yep.
And that's not necessarily, I don't know. I still think Robert has talent.
Yep.
But it's more an indication of he has value out there, I think. I don't think anyone agrees that he's the same player as 2 or 3 years ago. I think he's had some decline, but I still think there's some contenders out there or some teams who would mind shedding some salary that would take him on. So if I was a betting man, I would say that Robert Covington would be the first Blazer to go.
Yeah, he's got the right kind of salary. He could help. Me and you have debated. What I've learned from doing this and talking to other people is mostly just like people in the media world, is that I think I'm higher on Robert Covington than most. But I agree that he has not been good this year. I'm not. I'm just.
That's right. What was our discussion?
I said that he would start for every team. I said he would start for every team in the league. And then you ripped off a bunch of teams that he wouldn't start for.
Right.
So, I guess depending on who you ask, there's a different level of opinion of what Rocco brings. But I will agree, undeniable, he's playing fewer minutes than he did last year. Undeniable that he doesn't close games. It often doesn't close games, and they've gone Nance recently or gone in other directions in some of those minutes, gone small in other ways. And that he's just struggling. Hasn't been as impactful on defense under Billups, and he's was like a really good spot up shooter, and he's not that. Like he's not as nearly at that level last year. Like it's true. It's a factual thing.
My sense too on the other end of the spectrum,
mm-hmm.
just in talking or hearing Chauncey talk, and by seeing the production, I would think the least likely player besides Dame traded is Nasir Little. I think that's exactly the type of player that Joe and Chauncey are valuing.
Absolutely.
Upside, plays his ass off.
Versatile.
And I'm not versatile. So I would think that Nasir is kind of trending towards the Dame part of your chart if you're trying to divide up who's going, who's staying. I really think they're going to keep Nasir.
Yeah, and they're going to keep Dame. Like he's pledged it a million times. And I guess the speculation was that if someone else came in, that they might say, "Hey, I want my own version of whatever's next," and that's going to include trading Dame and rebuilding.
Well, I think that was the big tell also yesterday.
Right.
In talking to Joe in his office, he was like, this is not going to be a rebuild. It's not going to be a retool. This is not going to be status quo. We want to win. And
Sure.
That says we're building around Dame.
Yep.
So all those people who are worried about whether or not the Blazers are going to keep Dame, I think if you read between the lines of what Joe is saying, they want to win. They want to win now. And that means keeping Damian Lillard.
Yeah. I mean, like teams like the Blazers don't have the luxury of hoping that the next top 10 player shows up in the building. When you have him, you got to kind of maximize your window. And you could argue that the window has moved or whatever it is. But like, it just makes sense from a competitive standpoint that at least for the next little bit that you say, listen, this is one of the 10 best players in the NBA. We have him on our roster. Let's try to be as good as we can, because the other side is kind of, it can be a long road back to having one of these types of players on your roster for sure.
But I do think, though, the next question with Dame, about the extension and stuff, I do think you need to debate that. I don't think he just rubber stamp that and agree to it. I think you see how his injury plays out. You kind of look at where the roster reconstruction goes and what your financials are looking at. But I don't think you'd rubber stamp that yet. But right now, definitely you keep and build around Dame.
So I think there's a middle ground between saying like, hey, when we hit July 1 or whatever, when the new league year starts and you're eligible, you're getting an extension, versus saying like, you're under contract for 3 more years. We want you here, but like we're running a basketball team. We got to kind of figure out what that looks like. And if you get the sense that Dame is going to be unhappy or whatever, and like that you need to do something, not giving him $100 million past his 35th birthday makes probably his exit a little cleaner on the Blazers end. So like you need to be responsible the way you run a franchise. That doesn't mean that on July 1st, he's not going to 4 minutes into July, he's not going to get a $100 million extension. It just means you don't need to promise that pre-Christmas.
Right.
I agree with you. You got to run it. You got to run the basketball team with forward thinking, and I think that's like one of the things that you've highlighted that Cronin might be really good at, is kind of seeing both the present and the future. Speaking of the present, before you get out of here, it sort of seems like, and Cronin danced around this a little bit, like they're still going to duck out of the tax, right? Like they're still not going to be a tax team this year. Do you think that's true?
I would imagine, yes. Okay. That sounds like it. I mean, he's got a ton of ways to get out of it.
Sure.
But whether it be Cody or Snell or the Covington and Nurkic thing that we talked about earlier,
or just CJ and you trade back for $27 million of salary versus $30 million, right? Yeah,
and like he said, it's $3 million. It's easy to back out of that. You know, it's easy to kind of backpedal. So I would imagine, he talked about like how it's not just really a financial decision. There's a lot of kind of cap mechanics that go along with being tied into the tax. No sign and trades, less wiggle room on trades. Can't remember what the other things he said.
Oh, the mid-level exception changes.
Oh, the mid-level
taxpayer versus non-taxpayer mid-level exception. Right. So yeah, there's some incentive to do that.
Right. So it's not all financial. It's not just dollars and cents. There's a lot of flexibility that comes with being under the tax line.
Yeah, I mean, most of that flexibility is next year in the new league year, it sounds like. If you get out of the tax is at the end of this league year. You have to be under. That's how the money works. And then you would get paid out from the other teams that are in the tax. So there's definitely some money involved. There's some dollars and cents for sure. Sure. Yeah. But I agree with you that there's like there's some actual like sort of machinations of like how to improve the roster. Maybe getting cheaper allows you to get better down the line for sure. And they're like, they have a bunch of money on the books. They're gonna pay the tax in the future. It's just like who do you pay the tax to, I guess, is the decision.
Right. And that's another thing. It's like being in the repeater tax,
right.
But the thing is that he wanted to emphasize is that he has not been given marching orders yet to get under it. It's not a real high motivation right now of Jody. Sure. He paints it more that she wants to just get better, and then they'll talk about the financials after that.
Yeah, I mean, the value of Cronin is that he is known to be really creative. A trade I remember Neil explaining to me was the Hassan Whiteside trade, and basically like the Blazers had Mo Harkless and Myers Leonard entering expiring years, and he kind of found that, hey, if we give Miami this money, it allows them to get out from under what they want to get out from under and get Jimmy Butler and make their moves, and it allows us to get like a quote unquote starting caliber center. Like he found it not only a financial and basketball solution for him, but he's watching the whole league and finding a financial solution and basketball solution for other teams. Like that creativity is the value of why I think he can be a totally competent GM.
That was one of my favorite quotes of our interview. Was he said, the salary cap is not just about math. It's about creativity.
Yep.
And, following rules and loopholes and all that. But I thought that was really interesting. And that's a great way to illustrate it, is the Miami trade is, not just looking at your scenario, but how can I help another team help us?
Exactly, because everyone has financial and basketball goals, and you gotta. That's why you're on the phone talking to people. That's why trades aren't like, here's the person on the trade block, let's make some offers. You're figuring out, you're making calls, and like if he was, as you explained, like kind of getting to first base on the trade talk, like, hey, let's get it going. You figure out what people's goals are, and then you're creative with what you're offering and who else you bring in and all these things. So. Yeah, I think, I'm excited to see what Cronin does. It's, he kind of just said, we're going to do it. We're going to fix this roster that has some challenges. So I would say we are 2 months out from the trade deadline as we're recording this on December 10th. Trade season starts like in earnest on December 15th. Yep. We got a fun next 60 days in Blazerland to see what the future of the franchise looks like. And it sounds like Joe Cronin is going to be the one that shapes that future.
Yep. Fun stuff ahead, I think. And I think there's going to be, as I wrote today, I think some of it's going to hurt. I think some of it's going to be really sentimental. And I think this roster is going to look a lot different. And I think it might come in little increments. It's going to be a process, but I think it's going to be, we're going to have a lot to talk about, Mike.
Yeah. Changes are on the horizon.
Yep.
I totally agree. It's kind of messy to get to this point, but in a way, having a new vision to sort of push this roster forward is there'll be some real value in it for the Blazers.
Yeah.
Dear listeners, subscribe to Jason's work on The Athletic. We've mentioned 3 or 4 different stories that he's written. You're not getting those anywhere else. No one's in the back hallway talking to CJ McCollum but Jason. I'm in the building. I'm not talking to him. I went home and Jason's there writing a story. So like, if you want to be closer to the team, there is no better way to do it than subscribing to The Athletic. You will get you're getting the guy talking to CJ McCollum in the back hallway and sitting in Joe Cronin's office and interviewing the new GM. If you want to learn more about the team, the place to do it is with Jason's work at The Athletic. So make sure you go there and subscribe. They got good deals now. Do it during the month of December and lock yourself into a good deal at The Athletic and support Jason's work. He's a recurring guest on this podcast, so he'll be back next week sometime. We do this every week, not only with Jason, but I do 5 shows a week available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, support me. We're trying to get to 2,000 subscribers by New Year's. That's 2,000 subscribers by 2022. It is painless and easy to hit the subscribe button. It will not hurt you. So if you've listened this deep into the podcast, please go ahead and do that and tell your friends to do the same. People hear about podcasts by word of mouth. That's how they do it. You say, I like this podcast. It was good. Or you text them or tweet it or whatever it is. So share the podcast. That's a great way to bring new listeners in. I would truly appreciate it. All right.
And you can see Mike's art. You can see Mike's art behind him.
You can see right into my basement studio. It's
your mom's basement, right?
Jason, here's one for you. I was going to save this, but I'm going back to my parents' home next week. Yes. Literally next Saturday, I will record from my mom's basement.
Oh, that is awesome.
I'm going to be there for a little while. I'm staying for a couple weeks. So I'm literally going to call you from my mom's basement. So
that's going to be, I'm going to so look forward to that.
Yeah.
Another reason to subscribe to YouTube. Let's see Mike's mom's basement.
See my mom's basement, exactly. A place where Jason literally thought I lived for years and years.
Yes.
All right.
Right on.
All right. Thanks again, Jace.
You bet. We'll see you.
Talk to you soon, listeners. Tell your friends about it. Appreciate you. Bye-bye.